What's going on, guys, and welcome back to my AEW Collision audio review today for the Fight for the Fallen episode from August 19th, 2023. I am Graham G.S. Matthews. Hope you guys are doing well and having a great weekend so far. Another good show this week, I thought. Some great video packages early on that I'll probably address early on in my review just to kind of get them out of the way before I forget. More build for Allin, more build for All Out. I will say this right off the bat. They did advertise that we would hear from FTR. Technically, they weren't wrong. I did not watch the show live. So I had seen someone say on Twitter while the show was going on last night, I didn't catch up on it until earlier today, earlier this morning. Someone had said, we didn't hear from FTR. Why didn't they appear? And obviously the whole Cash Wheeler situation going on right now. I was confused as to why they would advertise FTR on Rampage after the Wheeler situation had already come out earlier that day. They could have easily changed that or whatever, and they didn't. I think even though it was a tape show. But regardless, they didn't, and it's because they were on the show, just not in person. They weren't there in person, and we did hear. AEW does this weird thing, and they always have, where we'll hear from someone, and it could be a backstage segment, but it could also be a couple of comments in a video package. We heard them talking about their upcoming match with the Young Bucks at Allin, which, on all accounts, I think is still happening. I think Wheeler can still travel to that country, and whether AEW knew about the issue or they didn't know about the issue, it's a problem either way. What Wheeler did was dumb, and if he didn't tell them, that's an issue. If he did tell them and it didn't come out until now, that's also an issue as well. And they were promoting the match anyway, thinking, well, it's okay, we could still do the match. I would have to assume at this point the Young Bucks are winning, which they were probably going to win anyway, but this kind of cements that outcome to me, which I don't really want to see them win, but that's just me. It should be a tremendous match, but that's a whole other situation. There's no real update on that as of now. The only update I can provide from what I understand is that he can travel to England for that show next weekend. So they were promoting the match here. This was a live Collision. If they didn't think the match was going to happen, they did not need to do this video package. We heard from both Wheeler and Harwood. I don't know when these comments were recorded. We didn't see them, but they did talk about their history with the Bucks over a video package promoting the feud, promoting the match for next weekend. So just to kind of address that out of the gate. I'm not defending AEW by any means. I'm just saying they did appear on the show, technically. Not exactly what I was expecting either. But like I said, this did end up being a good show overall. Samoa Joe is set to kick off the show in action against the dude named the Golden Vampire, a luchador decked out in, from head to toe in gold. Turned out to be quite quickly CM Punk, who attacked Joe before the bell, laid him out with a messy-looking GTS, but Joe sold it well anyway, so props to him. Hopefully they can nail that a bit better come the match at All-In next weekend. And Punk got on the mic and said, "I accept, bitch," and that was it. We got the graphic. It's going to be Joe and Punk officially at All-In next weekend for the real, quote-unquote, real world championship, which I honestly don't like. I get why it is for the, again, real world championship, because why wouldn't it be if Punk is parading around as the champion? But I just feel like it makes it obvious that Punk's winning. He already beat Joe a couple of weeks ago. I thought there was a chance that Joe might win here to set up a rematch for All Out, maybe a stipulation match. It's pretty obvious that's not happening. If the real world title is on the line, and they're clearly building the Punk and MJF again for the championship, which might also make it obvious that we're getting MJF, and that MJF is going to be beating Cole at All In next weekend. I just don't like that being for the real world championship. That shouldn't really be the focus. I'm not even really sure Joe mentioned that belt once. Ricky Starks did during their mini feud a couple of weeks ago. Samoa Joe never did, to my knowledge. So, not a big fan of that. This was a nice way to kick off the show, a hot opening. New match made official for All In, and I'm looking forward to it. Jay White was in action after that. Jay White taking on Dalton Castle here of Ring of Honor. We do not see nearly enough of Dalton Castle on these shows. He's appeared on Dynamite before and probably Rampage, and I know the Battle of the Belt specials and whatnot. Castle's great. He's all over Ring of Honor TV, but, I watch Ring of Honor TV. Who the fuck actually does? I know, more people are probably obviously watching Ring of Honor now than they were pre-AEW buying them, but it's still, not as important as it probably should be. I don't know. I think Castle's good enough to be on the main AEW shows. He's been in Ring of Honor for fucking, a decade now. It's time to move on. This match proved that. This was a very well-wrestled matchup. They worked well together, and Jay White goes over in the end as he should have. A competitive match, which was fine, because, again, White is more established now. Him having a competitive match when he first came in AEW against fucking Komandar, who gives a shit? Who the fuck is Komandar? He's not someone they're focusing on. They're not focusing on Castle either, but he's more established. White's been around long enough. He should have gotten a squash win when he first showed up in AEW. He didn't need one here. This was a good match. I enjoyed this. Coming out of the commercial break, we heard from all of Bullet Club Gold putting the Elite, or rather the Golden Elite, on notice for Allin next weekend, because it was made official on Dynamite this past week. It's going to be Kota Ibushi, Kenny Omega, and Adam Page representing the Golden Elite, taking on Bullet Club Gold's Jay White, Juice Robinson, and Konosuke Takeshita, who's not a part of Bullet Club Gold, but is in that match as part of his feud with Kenny Omega. Not a random match. I mean, it makes enough sense, but it just kind of came together at the last minute. A forced build on Wednesday night, so they attempted to add more heat to the match here by addressing Bullet Club and saying that White and Kenny go back a decade. He's known him for 10 years, and they've had history in New Japan before. I think it was actually White who won his first United States Championship in New Japan by beating Omega back in 2018, if I'm not mistaken. And I think Kota Ibushi was part of that whole, him and Omega were doing that whole thing with the Bucks at that point as well, as part of the whole Bullet Club is fine thing. So there is history there. It just feels random because Bullet Club Gold were not focused on the Elite at all until this week. But whatever. We then had an impromptu 6-man tag team match with Juice Robinson and the Gun saying, listen, we want to warm up for a match against the Elite, Kenny Omega and the Bucks coming up on Wednesday's Dynamite. Give us a match right now. They took on the Iron Savages, Bronson Boulder and Jack Jameson as their manager. He occasionally wrestles. He did here. This was better than I thought it would be. Iron Savages are a very good team, the former Bear Country. They've been in AEW for fucking years now, primarily in Ring of Honor now. They had a really good match the other week with Aussie Open on Ring of Honor TV. The problem was that they never win. They lost the Acclaimed a week or two ago. I think it was last week, actually. They never win. There was no reason to take them seriously. The crowd was more behind them here than I thought they would be, which is why this match exceeded my expectations. But it was a win nonetheless for Robinson and the Guns, with Robinson picking up the win for his team. We heard from Ricky Starks backstage, and I'll mention this quickly, too. We got a lot of video packages on this show, like I mentioned earlier. We got one of the House of Black addressing the Acclaim / Billy Gunn. They continue to show the footage of Billy Gunn walking out in the Acclaimed. I think I've seen that footage now fucking 5 times on these shows. And AEW never does replays, but they did on this show and they have on Dynamite to kind of catch people up to speed with the storyline. Billy Gunn is coming back, probably next week or the week after, to set up that 6-man for All Out. I guarantee you, and they're going to beat House of Black for those 6-man tag team titles. Whatever. So that was the purpose that served on the show. We had a great vignette for Ricky Starks, just showing him his absolute, talking about himself and realizing what he needed most and turning his back on the fans and whatever. That led into the match with him managing, because he, remember, is suspended for 30 days, but they changed it to 28 days, and they're retroactively saying that the suspension started when he attacked Ricky Starks, or rather Ricky Steamboat, the other Ricky, 2 weeks ago. So already his suspension is half over, which is kind of dumb. But on the bright side, that means he can wrestle at All Out in a couple of weeks, which is nice. So clears him up perfectly for that. And what he does on that show, I don't know. But in the meantime, he is appearing on Collision as part of a managerial position. He manages Big Bill now, who could use a manager. I think Bill can talk on his own, and I love W. Morrissey's work and Impact up until he went to AEW. They have done fucking nothing with him at AEW this past year. The whole firm bullshit was fucking terrible. That kind of quietly dissipated, so I'm glad he's hopefully on his own, away from Lee Moriarty. They don't really have a lot of great chemistry anyway. They work well together, but they just don't really need each other as partners. So Bill being on his own, or the manager, is great. I just don't like Ricky. I think Ricky, he can be on his own. He needs to be on his own. Ricky's been with Powerhouse Hobbs before and all these other people. He doesn't need anyone at this point. So even as a heel, he can remain on his own. I don't like him just being Big Bill's. Like, it feels to me way too similar to the dynamic that Christian has with Luchasaurus. Way too similar. Stark should be out doing his own thing. For now, it's fine, but this does not need to be a permanent pairing. We also got an interesting vignette for La Fascion and Gobernable. Now, I think it was Roosh on the phone talking to Jose the assistant about how, I mean, we're going back fucking months here, but he was all pissed at Jose because Preston Vance and Dralistico lost that Texas Tornado match on Dynamite to Hook and Jack Perry. And Perry turned on Hook in June. So that's how far this whole thing goes back. Why they're addressing this now, I don't know. I know in real life Roosh had a kid, and that's why he's been gone. It feels a little too late because no one gives a shit about the faction at this point. I mean, they can if they rebuild them back up, but we saw them celebrating in Mexico. Then they got kidnapped, thrown into a van. Jose clearly approved of it, and it said to be continued. So we'll find out probably more next week. Interesting vignette, to say the least. As far as the Big Bill stuff I mentioned, he quickly beat some dude named Derek Neal, and that was that. Women's action on the show saw Willow Nightingale take on Diamante after Diamante and Mercedes Martinez knocked off Willow and Chris Statlander last week. This was another well-worked, enjoyable quality contest. Nightingale is so over. Diamante is quite talented as well. I think, and I wrote this in my review, I don't think we have ever seen Diamante on AEW TV for as long as we did in this one segment. Now, that sounds crazy. She's been to the AEW basically since she won the fucking Deadly Draw tournament years and years ago. But I'm talking on the main show. And to show how far back that was, she won it with Eva Lee, so we have not seen an AEW in years. So that's how long she's been in the company. On a contractual basis, I don't know. I thought she was on like a pay-per-appearance deal, but I'm not really sure at this point. I'm not sure if we've ever seen her in as lengthy of a match as we got here from her and Willow. And that's a great thing. I'm just surprised it took this long. They just never really focused on her until now. Again, this was a good match, won by Willow. She continues to be really over. Mercedes was at ringside. Martinez, not Monet. And we also had Chris Statlander, the TBS champion, at ringside as well. So it looks like, to me, we might get Willow Nightingale against Mercedes in a number one contenders match. And the winner might face, that's what I would do anyway, winner faces Statlander at All Out. Because we're already getting a four-way next week at Allin with Shida, Storm, Saraya, and Britt Baker for the AEW Women's World Championship. We don't need another four-way a week later at All Out. I like all four of these women, but the biggest match they can do, and they already did Mercedes and Chris Statlander a week or two ago, they could just do Willow versus Statlander straight up, one-on-one, for the TBS Championship at All Out. That's what I would do. Powerhouse Hobbs in action, taking on Kevin Koo, formerly of AEW, not of AEW, but formerly of MLW fame, quote-unquote. I recognize the name. I remember his name from MLW. I hadn't seen a lot of his work in MLW. He wasn't there for very long up until he left, from when I started watching anyway. He was over here, though. The crowd was really into him for whatever reason. I don't know if he's from the area or whatever the hell happened, but the crowd chanted his name. They wanted him to win. He did not. Hobbs killed him anyway. And then Hobbs putting Miro on notice, who popped up on the big screen afterward. He mentioned that he was on his own now, no matter how much his heart breaks for her. Now, what that means, I don't know. Could that be indicating Lana's on her way in? CJ Perry? Maybe. She was backstage reportedly at Dynamite recently, so it's very possible she pops up soon, and I'm not against it. Just keep her out of the ring. Miro doesn't exactly need her, but it wouldn't be the worst thing either, and they were a great pairing in WWE. But Hobbs and Miro was made official for All Out, so that's going to be happening, which is nice. We have not seen Miro on a pay-per-view since All Out last year, since that six-man tag team match that he lost. Actually, I think they won. They beat House of Black, him, Darby Allin, and Sting, as random as that sounds in retrospect. Speaking of Darby Allin, he was in action on the show, beating Christian Cage. I was thinking attacking because we also saw footage earlier on in another pre-tape promo from Darby Allin. They showed footage of Sting going to one of AR Fox's shows, I think at his training facility or whatever, attacking AR Fox after Nick Wayne was attacked at his home training camp or whatever by Swerve and AR Fox, so I thought that was cool. But no, Darby took on Christian Cage here in the main event, an excellent match. And this is why I'm bothered that they don't do more with Christian. He's all over the shows, he's like pretending to be the TNT champion. It's a dumb idea, but it works, and it's been entertaining, whatever. I'm bothered that he doesn't wrestle more. He was in a tag team match a month ago, probably more than a month ago at this point, but we really haven't seen enough of him in the ring lately. He had this great singles match here. This was his first television singles match in, I don't know, a year and a half? It's been a long time. He got hurt at All Out a year ago. He was in action at Double or Nothing, Revolution, All Out last year, but he hasn't wrestled a singles match on TV in forever. And the guy can clearly still go as seen in this match. I'm just bothered that they don't have him wrestle more. So Allin wins in like fluky-esque fashion. He didn't beat him decisively. He kind of rolled him up in a way. I don't know what you would call it exactly, but Allin won. And then after the match, Christian and Luchasaurus laid him out, and that was it. So they got their heat back. This is the most focus I have seen the TNT title get in ages. So it's nice. The problem was that I thought Allin and Christian, to me, was more of a pay-per-view worthy match, more so than Allin versus Luchasaurus. That should still be a very good match, but Cage versus Allin, to me, was the bigger attraction, and we got it on this show for free, and now they're asking you to pay for Allin and Luchasaurus at the pay-per-view. Whatever. The build has been well done, though. They've been building towards this for over a month, so it's nice to see the TNT title finally have a fucking feud for a change and not just be thrown out there in random open challenges. Luchasaurus has done absolutely nothing as champion, don't get me wrong, but Cage, by not even holding it and pretending to hold it, has made it more relevant than anything that anyone has done to that belt in a long time. So, as ironic as that seems, because he's not even the champion, that's just a fact. Overall, though, a good show. I really, really liked the main event, and I liked the opening segment with Punk making that match official for All Out. A lot of enhancement matches in the middle. Hobbs squashing someone, Big Bill squashing someone, Jay White and Castle wasn't a squash. It got some time. Nightingale and Diamante got some time. They were simple matches, and Collision is a simple show, which is why I like the show. It is worth noting, though, I think Jim Ross is now full-time on Collision. I think he's on the show full-time going forward, as announced on this episode, I think. So it's going to be Kevin Kelly's back, so no more Ian Riccaboni. It's going to be Nigel McGuinness, Kevin Kelly, and Jim Ross. I don't think Jim Ross needs to be on the show. I don't like three-man booths. AEW has a lot of three-man booths, but at the same time, I think JR still does Rampage. Maybe he won't be anymore, but they probably want to put him on a show that's not Dynamite. That's not their A show. Even though Collision to me is their A show, even if the ratings don't reflect it. It's not the worst thing. I just like Nigel and either Kevin Kelly or Ian Riccaboni in a 2-on-2 situation, 1-on-1 situation. We don't need JR there, but he was perfectly serviceable on the show. So 2 thumbs up for Collision this week. Not a great show by any means, but enjoyable enough. Not really anything special for the Fight for the Fallen edition, but I know that wasn't really the point. They slapped that on there because I think all proceeds to all 3 of these shows this week, Rampage, Collision, and Dynamite, all went to the Maui Foundation. Like all the tragedy that happened there recently, all the money made from these shows, I believe, are going to that, which is great. So for that reason alone, that's pretty cool. Thank you guys for checking out my Collision review for this week from August 19th, 2023. I appreciate it. Be sure to like the video, drop a comment, share the video, and subscribe to the channel for more daily content. A bit of a programming note here, no Collision review next week. Obviously, All In is like first thing on Sunday, so I will not be doing a Collision review. Next weekend, I'll be away anyway. I'm not even sure if I can do a SmackDown review. I'm not really sure yet, but it might be delayed if so. But no Collision review. I don't know what I'll be putting up on Sunday, but keep an eye out for that here on the channel. And I'm looking forward to All In, coming up in England in a week from today. Have a great one, guys. I'm Graham G. Matthews, and I'll catch your ass down the road.